The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of ParaX, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Merry meet and merry part, bright the cheeks and warm the heart. For tread the circle thrice about, to keep unwelcome spirits out. Bide within the law you must, in perfect love and perfect trust. Mind the threefold laws you should, 3 times bad and 3 times good. These 8 words the read fulfill, and ye harm none, do what ye will.
Welcome to Stirring the Cauldron on the ParaX Radio Network. And now, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
Merry meet, everybody, and welcome. My guest tonight is William J. Hall, and he's the author of the book The World's Most Haunted House, which is the true story of the Bridgeport Poltergeist in Lindley St in 1974. Bill was born and raised in Bridgeport, and he had seen the Lindley haunting on TV when he was 10 years old, and it was one ghost story that really stuck in his mind for years. He's professionally equipped to recognize trickery. After more than 25 years as a performing magician, he knows how to create and recognize illusions. He's also an experienced researcher of the unexplained, from folklore and urban legends to fortune-telling, the pyramids, and mysterious tales. Bill was here, a few years back when the book came out, and now he's back with the 50th Anniversary Investigator Companion Guide, which includes never-before-released full-color photos, interviews about the case, and a whole lot more. Now, if you're listening live to the show tonight and you have some questions or comments, please join us at the ParaX chat room at paraxradionetwork.com. All right, Bill, welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, you have to come back because this is going to be a really good thing. It's like the book over again, and then maybe things that people wanted to wonder what some things are going to work and didn't work, and fill in some of the stuff that you got all that time, and it's kind of neat. But before with that, I was just wondering, did you become a magician and a researcher of the unexplained because of the Lindley St haunting when you were a kid?
No. I grew up watching, In Search of and those shows, and I always had a interest in the weird and unknown and that sort of thing. And I think being a magician, you want to, you're looking for the real version of what you're doing. So for me, it was kind of an outgrowth of that.
Okay. And, we're talking about haunting and poltergeist. Is poltergeist activity considered to be a haunting?
Yeah, I mean, in our sense of the word, when we generally use the term haunting, I wouldn't say the title's kind of a misnomer, because with a poltergeist, it's usually not a haunted house, but more like a haunted person, a haunted family. But generally, we throw it under that title just because people consider that within the realm of the haunting.
Yeah, an umbrella thing, kind of things.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah. It's for technically, you can argue the world's most haunted person or something. But
well, yeah, and too, haunting. I mean, you think of haunting and it's ghosts, but it could be something else, But again, that's kind of yeah. But it gets people's attention no matter what. So that's the good thing. But there's some people. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say you bring up a good point, because we tend to think of for example, if it's indoors, it's a ghost. If it's outdoors, it's a UFO. And so we tend to think very two-dimensional, but you're right. We really don't know what these things are or how to classify them. We know how they behave, and how to get rid of them, but other than that, it's kind of interesting because some of these things do cross over, with UFOs and other kind of phenomena at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And the boogeyman, that's a good word for too, or a boogie person. Can't say boogeyman anymore.
Yeah.
It's not good. All right. But so there's a lot of people that might not have read the book and know anything about the background of the house and all this. So can you get a little bit into it and explain what happened?
Sure. So the family was Laura and Jerry Gooden, who were middle-aged, and they had a young son who died at about age 6 of bad fever. He couldn't walk on his own or anything, so he had a lot of complications, and they were devastated by that, and they adopted a little girl they called Marcia, which is a weird pronunciation, but they called her Marcia, and she, after adopting her, that's when they started some things happening, beginning with the knockings on the inside and outside of the walls of the house that would follow them room to room. And there also was some kind of simmering phenomena, like keys missing and chair was out and I knew I put it in, that sort of thing. So Jerry, in fact, confided in a friend. He thought he was losing his mind. And then the activity really seemed to take off as a catalyst of some things that happened to Marcia. She was quite smothered, and as far as parenting style, because of the death of young Jerry Jr., the parents were really smothering to Marcy, and that really was part of the catalyst of poltergeist activity. But that's kind of a basic background.
When was the house built? Do you know?
I'm sorry, what was that?
When was the house built?
Oh, in the 30s, I believe. It's a tiny little bungalow built for a shirt manufacturer. I think it's 700 some square feet. It's a very, very tiny place.
And I know you read that actor Bob Crane from Hogan's Heroes lived there in that house for a while, and others as well over the years. But there weren't any issues, anything wrong then that nobody knew about anyway, right?
Right. Yeah, we don't know of any activity prior to or after that, which is not abnormal for poltergeist activity, although certainly the area of the home itself could be a catalyst to it, and it could have impacted others in the house, depending on who you get to live in there. And some people said Bob Crane living there could have been the whole cause of it, but
Yeah, it just, and it seems like poltergeist and ghosts. All right, so I'm going to be jumping back and forth, but, people were seeing refrigerators flying through the kitchen and stuff like that, right? Floating refrigerators and jumping furniture and all that. Now, poltergeists, we know kind of what they are, but couldn't regular ghosts do the same thing? So maybe it wouldn't be poltergeist, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does make sense. We categorize them as a poltergeist usually based on the circumstances of it impacting usually a girl or a boy 2 to 1, and usually it's a preteen, and it causes some internal frustration that's bottled up. And we tend to classify those as poltergeists. One could say they're a species of that is a little bit different, but like you said, there's similar things that can happen in a regular haunting that could happen in a poltergeist too. We just we just call it a poltergeist based on kind of the situation outline in which it appears and the way it performs. But it's, some cases it would be hard to say. Basically they are part of the, in my opinion, the species of parasites that are of the lower kind and feed off of that sort of negative energy.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask the people in the chat room, because they all are ghosty people for the most part. Do you guys ever, or do you think that a ghost would pick up a refrigerator? Have the ability to? Because, you see sometimes that people say that they get picked up by a spirit, right? They hang them on the door or something. So I don't know. I don't know. Nobody can tell for sure, but do ghosts or spirits have the ability to lift things that are on this plane because they're coming on from the other plane? Did you ever think about that?
Yes, it's and it's quite interesting because I think we have two things going on. I think there were many things that happened that were very focused and intentional, like picking up the little girl and throwing her across the room would be, more of an intentional act. Other items like refrigerator floating, chairs opening and closing on their own, things like that. Certain things could happen simply because of the energy caused by having that kind of what I would call kind of like a parallel world intersect if you're into the multiverse, or veil is thin if you want to talk more old school terms. But I think what we're dealing with is a case of we have the effect of that energy that's there. And then on top of that, you have the actual parasites. So there may be two things, going on there, and that not everything is an intentional act by the parasite itself.
Okay, we got a comment from the chat room. She says, I hear often that things move around ghosts, but the amount of energy to do these other things begs the question whether there is something else going on, like something other dimensional maybe. And that makes sense.
Yes, that's actually, that almost sounds like what I was talking about, that I think we have the two things going on. We have some of the things caused by the existence of that energy, and then we have other things that are intentional, by the parasites being there and trying to feed off that negative energy, from the little girl.
Yeah, she just said parasite is a good word. And Kathy says, if I ever saw a refrigerator floating in the air or being tossed around, I would scramble the hell out of there. Would you? Would you have to be the Popeye of ghosts? It would have to be the Popeye of ghosts. Yeah. It's. I mean, when you hear this, people are saying that again, jumping furniture, floating refrigerators. That you always hear that people like cupboards come up and dishes fall down, chairs move. But when you have something like so heavy like furniture and refrigerators, you kind of like strap your head. It's just kind of interesting.
Well, yeah, and it did it quite slow too. Lifting up slow, and then it would always turn a little bit and come down, almost like it wanted you to know it's there. But the refrigerator lifting had the police pretty stumped. There were just a lot of witnesses to that, and TV falling down either fast or slowly, like when it hurt Laura's toes and actually broke a toe when it came down during the height of the poltergeist activity.
Mm-hmm.
But it was quite heavy activity for a poltergeist that weekend, and that was a buildup of things that led to it, with Marcy being at the center of it, being shy. I'm sorry?
So they were blaming Marcy for it, right?
Yeah, well, she was identified more like the agent. I mean, the authorities used the story that it was Marcy, to get the city back after people just kept going out there, and they had to close the road down. And, it was really crazy the amount of public view that this case had because of the emergency vehicles and word spreading out. And they used it as a hoax story, but Marcy was definitely a focus of the activities, but she certainly didn't cause them, nor was she there for more than half of them. She wasn't even there.
See, there's so many. It's like an onion peeling a thing. You open one thing and another and another and another goes, and it's several layers of things that are going on there. And then at some point, and maybe it's this weekend that you were talking about, there was more than 2,000 onlookers there. The national media was reporting all this stuff, and it really did become like a three-ring paranormal circus. So when all that was going on, did the family ever want to just walk away?
Well, they, money-wise, they couldn't just walk away from that. They wanted to get out of the house. They wanted to sell the house. They wanted to get out of town because it was hard for, it was even hard for Jerry at work. But, the public outcry was something else, because the police cars showed up first and the fire department. And after all those emergency vehicles and everything, and word getting around from the police and everyone else, the crowd started forming. And there was about 2,000 people up and down the street trying to get a look, and they ended up closing the street off. And, and the police were there constantly. So, the hoax story was natural because it just kept getting worse and worse. There was no answers. And the police had no answers. The fire department had no answer. The inspectors had no answers. So it kept getting worse for the police, and the chief wanted the city back. So the hoax story fell on their lap quite conveniently.
Yeah, and in general, when stories like that come up, most people would think it was a hoax of some type. But how much of the things were exaggerated once it did get started?
When you say exaggerated, what do you mean by that?
Well, more making things more happening that maybe wasn't happening, or just making a little bit of lies to make it maybe more interesting, that kind of thing.
Oh, well, that's the beauty of this case, is the not only the amount of witnesses, but the fact that it was one of the first times that we were able to isolate and have multiple people interviewed seeing the same phenomena, interviewed separately describing it, and then being able to cross-reference all of that together. So somebody may have saw the whole thing, maybe somebody didn't see it from the start, or somebody saw the end. And so you had the case where it wasn't just one person, but many of these incidents were reported separately by people.
Were the people, some of that were out there, could they look in and see things happening? Or people, I know the police and the fire and the priest all went in the house, but other people were in there too, allowed to get in there during times?
Well, I know the police had to kick people out because some people would just try to come into the place or bring a pie or something to try to get in and see what was going on. But the onlookers did report these old heavy cement swans that were decorations on the front of the house. The crowd did report seeing them move, and I know the police officer watching the house had reported guttural voice sounds. But the onlookers didn't see activity through windows where they weren't allowed to get that close by the police.
So all the things that you witnessed, people witnessed, they were ones that were mostly the police or the fire people or a handful of people that could go through?
Well, there was about 68 first-hand witnesses. So we had a lot of the police, about 13 firefighters, reporters, family, friends, priests. So there was a gamut of people in the house, for the reasons of the poltergeist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's just something like that happening, with all these people around there and believing or hoaxing, and I mean, it must have been chaos for a lot of the time. I mean, how long were people coming and going? Weeks or days or what?
Well, there was one weekend where it was the height of the poltergeist activity, and that's when the police had shown up and everything. So it was the second day where they blocked off the street, after all those people were there, because you couldn't even get around the area. It was so badly crowded. So they did end up closing the street. It's still a mess for the police, but they did end up doing that to try to control it. But people, of course, the interest didn't end there, of course, neither did the poltergeist activity. So people still tried to peek around, but the police basically got rid of it by closing off the road itself.
How did you find out some of the witnesses, who they were?
Well, lucky enough, the way it started was when I was looking at the library at some of the old newspaper reports more in depth. I found out that there was an investigation done after it was deemed a hoax, and that, of course, made me curious, because why would the police cooperate or mandate that their officers cooperate with an investigation if it was a hoax? And then reading what some of the police officers were saying and quoting in the newspapers certainly looked like something worth looking into further. And then I finally found the name of Boyce Beatty, who was leading the investigation that said in the newspaper. And I contacted him. Well, first I contacted Joe Tomic, who was the first responding police officer, and he told me that he was forced to be interviewed, which really intrigued me. And he said, yeah, we were all forced to be interviewed. They set up a conference room and everything. And so it was very much the police cooperating with something that they said was a hoax. And when I contacted Boyce Beatty, I ended up getting 30 hours of interviews that were done at the time. So there was 22 cassette tapes and a 8-hour reel-to-reel, and so that was the basis of finding out people who were involved, and then from there I did about 10 hours of my own interviews, and and those Facebook helped a lot by connecting people, and people were family members and who had information to add to it, and witnesses to bring forward. So there was additional people, and I even interviewed, like, for example, a girl who was in high school at the time, who was a friend of the family, was the parents, and so she was never interviewed. I ended up interviewing her. So, and then I interviewed a handful of the people who were interviewed back then, just to kind of get a reflective on what they thought now, and did they think the same, and how did it impact their life, that sort of thing. So that's how I got around to finding the witnesses. I was very lucky to have access to that, because without those interviews, we wouldn't have known, the real story, what happened on Lindley Street.
What prodded you to do the book in the first place?
Well, I couldn't stop. I went down the rabbit hole. I couldn't stop researching it. And once I listened to the audio tapes, it was a story that I knew needed to be told. Mm-hmm. So the book was just a natural outgrowth of that. I was going to go down the rabbit hole no matter what. I didn't know what I was going to find, if I was going to find it was a hoax or what. Mm-hmm. And I figured if it was a hoax, well, I wouldn't write a book on that. But so I didn't know what I was going to find. But once I listened to all the audio and knew this was a real bona fide poltergeist case, and one that was quite intense and interesting, then it became a natural outgrowth. I figured I didn't care if it sold one copy. It was a story I just had to get down.
So, since you were an adult, were you down the rabbit hole, or was it ever since you were 10 years old trying to get it?
No, just recently. I let it go for many years. Although as a performing magician, I was often asked about it, but I never really looked into it. And then one day when somebody did a Facebook post on it, I said, geez, I never really looked into that. And now we have the internet, so I was able to Google and read some of the newspapers, and that's what got me started going down the rabbit hole. But I did see it when I was 10 years old on TV. I remember asking my dad if it was real, and he's like, yeah. So he successfully bought the hoax story, but it wasn't until going down the rabbit hole and finding those tapes with Boyce handing over the case files to me, that was, of course, what really blew the door open on the case.
Yeah, and was it hard? With the police and the fire department and everything, did they keep a record and that you could go find it from there too? Obviously, it wasn't a hoax if they kept records. Yeah.
Well, they did do They did do some police reports. There was supposed to be a lot more police reports, but because everybody who was there was supposed to make a report, that didn't happen. But there were some police reports, which I reproduced in the book, and they did. And I'll hand it to the officers because they told it the way it is. Here's what happened, and I know Joe Tomic told me when they went to hand in the report, Chief didn't want to accept it. He's like, I can't accept it. He's like, well, that's what happened. If you want us to write something different, tell us, but this is what really happened here. So they did have those police reports, and Boyce had read the police reports into the tape recorder, which thank goodness he did, because they don't keep them that long. And in this case, I don't even know if kept them at all or destroyed them due to the nature of them. But even if they kept them, they don't keep them that long unless it's criminal or something like that. They keep them a little bit longer. So, but Joe Tomic kept the police report, and he was the one who sent me the police report to put in the book. He had kept it all these years and sent it over. And that report really, it's pretty brave report. I don't know what they would say today if it happened, or what they would write if it happened today. But those guys did tell it the way it is, exactly what happened. And it was quite a police report.
It must have been. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, so everybody stay put, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Don't go away. There's more Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks right after these important messages.
Do you know where the world's most secret bases are located? Do you know what spooky action at a distance means? Is there a conspiracy by aliens to prevent us from conquering space? And where is the best place in the United States to see a real UFO? Find the answers to all these questions and more in Mac Maloney's new book, Mac Maloney's Haunted Universe. Visit places you never knew existed: the Hampton Tunnels of Tokyo, the UFO Trail in South America, Ong's Hat, and the very mysterious M Triangle. Mac Maloney Haunted Universe contains hundreds of reports on ghosts, haunted planes and ships, weird celebrity deaths, mysterious sounds, and a breakdown of every monster in America, state by state. You've heard him talk about it on the radio. Now get all of Mac's paranormal research in one large volume, Mac Maloney's Haunted Universe, with a foreword by the very famous Juan Juan. On sale now in your local bookstore or on Amazon.com.
Whether you're listening at home, at work, or anywhere, thanks for making Para X part of your day. Your source for everything paranormal, Para X.
What if everything you thought you knew about time, free will, and reality was wrong? Unified reality theory dares to bridge science, philosophy, and religion to uncover the true nature of existence. Controversial? Yes. Mind-expanding? Absolutely. Find out what everyone will be talking about. Join the conversation now. Unified Reality Theory, now available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Get your copy today, because reality isn't as simple as it seems.
Welcome back to Stirring the Cauldron. Once again, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
And my guest tonight is Bill Hall, and we're talking about the 50th Anniversary Investigator Companion Guide to his book, The World's Most Haunted House. Phew, that got out. One of the things that we were talking about, I think when you were here the last time about it, is just that the witnesses are credible people, police, firemen, and priests. They seem to be intelligent, trustworthy people. So that made it even more interesting, isn't it? Because, if a hoax, not all those people would be doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And in the 70s, I mean, those guys didn't run in and yell ghosts. They were trying to figure it out. When they saw the refrigerator float, they were looking underneath and on top of the fridge and downstairs in the basement on the ceiling. They really did a good job of trying to figure out what it was. They didn't assume ghosts or anything like that. They were just trying to get to the bottom of what it was, no matter if it was the house settling or what. Everybody had their theories. Some didn't know, but they were most of them weren't what I would call afraid, although there was one police officer who backed out of the house and went into his car and locked the door and wouldn't get out. But other than that, they were very professional and did a very good job. And they were very 1970s tough, no-nonsense, police officers and firefighters. And so even though The Exorcist came out, they were aware of that. And so at first the police officers were thinking, oh, somebody's trying to do a thing on The Exorcist. But after they were there for a while, they realized it was quite real and, quite different.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like you have to pinch yourself to see it. And, am I really looking at this or not? You have to question yourself. Where am I here? There was a priest that came in. I have to bring this one up because it just kind of amusement. There was a priest and the talking cat. You want to talk about that?
Oh, yes. Well, the priest, I don't know if you're referring to Father Charbonneau came with the Warrens as part of the investigation, but originally the fire department called the department chaplain, Father Doyle, to come down, and he was trying to do a blessing, and every time he reached for the holy water after he got his little, they have the little cases where they would unfold it, they'd have all their stuff in it, and he'd take the holy water out and put it on the table, and then he'd go to reach for it, and it would fall over. And after a few times of that, he packed it all up and decided better not try to do that. But and the talking cat was quite a sensation. I don't think the cat itself talked. There was audio phenomenon. I think the cat got blamed for some of the audio phenomena going on. The other case with the cat was, Marcy would pretend to make the cat talk, but everybody knew that was fake. But there was nothing stranger than seeing CBS and ABC News and stuff with microphones up to the cat saying, "Hey, say something for us." But yeah, I think the cat thing was the audio phenomena, and the cat got blamed for it.
Poor cats. Everything gets blamed on the cats. You know that. So who did decide to get Ed and Lorraine Warren to come over and see what they said?
Well, Mary Pasquarella was the one who called the Warrens. She was a member of the psychic committee, and she saw what was going on there and gave them a call and said, you guys got to get down there. This is a real poltergeist case. And Ed and Lorraine were quite booked up and busy at the time and said, well, what's going on? And when she described all the police and everything was there, it just sounds like the real deal. And that's when they came down, and the family let them in because everyone else was trying things and nobody had any help or answers. So they figured, why not? Just come on in. If you could do something, come on in the house. So that's how they got involved in it. And it took them forever to get there because of all the people. They were probably only 15, 20 minutes away, but it probably took them an hour and a half with all the people, and they had to walk forever to get there because you couldn't even park nearby. It was just pandemonium.
So what did Ed and Lorraine find out?
Well, they were witness to a lot of the phenomena that happened. They helped comfort the family. And their biggest advice was, if the activity starts up, everybody get up and move to a different room, and that'll, slow it down or dissipate it some. And but mainly they were here helping the family, and Ed was trying to get an exorcism done, which I don't think would have done anything or was the right thing, but. So that was the old school belief in those days, but the church didn't want to get involved in it.
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe they were going to try to exorcise a cat or something. I don't know, but
yeah, the poor cat. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's in my head now. So how did this phenomenon last, and what was the outcome?
Well, the heaviest, I mean, it started in 1971 with the poundings on the inside and outside of the walls, and it became public November 1974 when all hell broke loose, excuse the pun, and that's when all the police officers, fire department, and everybody showed up. And this activity was mainly the catalyst of it was Marcy being smothered, sheltered, shy, picked on at school for about a year, and then beat up at school, and was forced to be at home with the mother. And they had this really toxic, exchange like flint and steel, so they didn't get along too good. And that culminated in, I think, all that activity after being at home from that, and that's when it exploded. And the heaviest part of the activity was over the weekend. And after that, it lasted in, past Christmas and into December. And it was Marcy getting transferred to a different school that really was the catalyst. Father Doyle brokered a deal with St. Patrick's Church to give them a grant so they'd be able to afford to send Marcy there, because they weren't going to send her back to the school where she was beat up. So he brokered that deal. And once she got to St. Patrick's, the teachers were kind to her, the kids were kind to her, and that's when the poltergeist activity petered out. So, which is usually the case. You have to break that negative energy, that negative thinking pattern that's going on that these things appear to feed on.
So is she still alive and talking about that?
No, unfortunately, when we found her, when we finally located her, she was deceased already, and she never talked about the activity, not even to her biological half-sisters who she later met up with. But no, she kind of kept that quiet and didn't want to, because she was known, they called her the poltergeist girl. So, so she didn't...
Labels.
She even changed her name and stuff. But no, when we found her, unfortunately, she was dead. And as in many of these cases, she had epilepsy and multiple sclerosis. And we find that it's quite often they have frontal lobe issues. So, but overall, she had a pretty good life. We did find out about her adult life and located her. In fact, there's some photos of her as an adult in the companion guide. So, we were able to find out what happened. And by that, what was interesting is when I found out from a reader that she had died, he sent a copy of a ad put out by the coroner's office. The coroner was trying to find any next of kin because they didn't know where to send the body to. She was just, sitting there, and so we located that. I contacted the coroner, and sure enough, it was Marcy, verified by her social and date of birth and all the information I had on her, and said, yeah, this is her. And they didn't know what to do with the ashes. I was almost going to take them, and then one of the biological half-sisters had read my book in Canada, and she contacted me, and we ended up arranging, and her Marcy's ashes got sent to there, and she was buried next to her biological mother. So it was it's a nice ending to a tragic discovery that she was dead.
Yeah. When did the family? How long did they stay in that house before they moved or went away? I mean, did they? I don't know how the parents were, how old they were. Well, you said they were middle-aged, so I didn't kind of figure out.
they stayed in the house for the rest of their lives. They did try to sell the house, but nobody would buy it, partially for obvious reasons, and the other reason was the asking price they needed because of the money they owed them. The house didn't make it desirable either, and it's a tiny house, so you had a lot of things against getting a successful sale on that one. So they ended up painting the house and staying there. They gave one last interview to basically to tell people that it's real, we're not crazy, and that Marcy didn't do it. So they did do one last interview on the radio, and then after that they wouldn't talk about it anymore.
Yeah, it's just something that one somebody in the chat room said, you don't always hear about poltergeist stuff. Usually it's ghosty stuff, and it's just kind of really interesting the way it went through. When did you decide to do the 50th book? To add, well, first of all, what did you add? New stuff that you picked up from the last time you wrote the book, right?
Well, some of the photos are new, and people have been asking to read some of the interviews for years, and so I put some interviews for people to read in there to really get an idea of, the kind of evidence we were looking at. So there's interviews in there, and then there's a lot of photos in color, and some that were in the book, the first book, and then a lot that we're not seeing before. And some are just fun photos, like Paulino, who was a young seminary student at the time, meeting up with Boyce again at the book launch, where they were reunited after all these years. So, there's some fun stuff in there too. But that's why I call it a companion guide, because it has some of the interviews. I couldn't fit them all, of course, but has some of the interviews in there, and then a timeline, and then a bunch of photos surrounding the case.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the other book, The World's Most Haunted House, and there's lots and lots of things in there, and pictures and graphs and all sorts of stuff. So I was thinking, boy, if you added to that, that's going to make it a really good thing. It was really interesting to see, pictures and listening to what people think and say. It's good. I mean, yeah, I'm glad you made that. It's a good book. It really is. Because the first one is too, and then then you're adding something. Wait a minute, looking at the chat room. Said, I don't understand why they say a preteen is responsible for objects being thrown around. I mean, isn't it just a form of telekinesis? Yeah, that makes sense.
That's one of the theories, and I don't mean that they blame the girl, but the girl being I would say a focal point of the attack, based on her spinning out in negative frequencies. One of the older theories is RSPK, the recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. I'm not sure if I buy into that one. I mean, it could be, but sending out negative frequencies and psychokinesis, it may be a matter of semantics if we come down to it and say that the girl definitely had all this negative energy being sent out, and that attracted these parasites to come. And obviously, there's a missing ingredient there that we don't know, but because otherwise we'd have the paranormal all figured out. But we definitely know it was the activities around the girl that centered the reason for the manifestations.
Mm-hmm. So now all of this added a book and look all other things that you, well, let me, I'm reading something and then I'm not talking to right. So what's your conclusion? I mean, are you through looking, you're satisfied for nothing else to go looking after?
On the Lindley Street case, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, am I done looking? Well, the case never ends.
That's what I'm wondering. Yeah.
It's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. You keep finding out new little bits and tidbits and things, and so it is one of those things that, as Boyce said, you're now curator of the case files, but there is always some new dimensions and additional items there, and there's probably some additional witnesses that that'll end up meeting. I mean, years later, we met Father Doyle's sister, and so I got to talk to her and learn how real and scared Father Doyle was of that house. And so it just never ends, because there were so many people that were witnesses. Then you had, of course, their sons or daughters, or the family, the friends, and so the word just spread to so many people. There was just so many. If you count secondhand witnesses, we're probably up to over 120, and so it never ends from that viewpoint. I'm satisfied with the fact that we got the story right. We got quite a full story of the poltergeist activity, but because of the sheer amount of witnesses, it makes it fascinating, because there's always the opportunity for some new detail to come out.
Okay. Well, there's a question for you. After all is said and done with the case, what kind of a reaction did all this leave on you?
Well, it solidified in my mind about the paranormal, for sure. I think if there's any case to prove the paranormal, it would be this one. Sometimes even better than seeing it myself, because if I see something myself, I could not sure if I'm hallucinating, or did I really see that sort of thing. But when you look at a case like this with all the witnesses, it really solidified for me how real this activity is. I was open to it, of course, before this, or else I wouldn't have, even went down the rabbit hole. But the fact that this just had so many witnesses, it was, I would sit back and shake my head, and it was almost better than being there, having all this testimony. It was quite eye-opening.
To your knowledge, has anybody a book about it as well? In a different context or something? Or is yours the only book?
No, because nobody had the tapes, so the real story wasn't known. It has been in a variety of books in an abbreviated form, telling the story that was known by the newspapers, but without the audio tapes, you wouldn't have the full story. And I was lucky enough for Boyce to be so generous to hand those over and say, go tell everybody about it.
So do you have a website or social media where people can find out more about you and your book and your other books as well?
Yes. If you go to Hall, HALL, of the paranormal.com, that's Hall of the paranormal.com. In the book section, you'll find all my books. I'd be happy that you can get a personally signed copy there, and as well as the new guide is there too. And hallofparanormal.com. Under the book section is all my books, which I'm happy to sign and send out with some surprises.
Oh, that'll be nice. So tell us about some of the other books too. We've got a minute or two.
Oh, sure. My second book was Haunted House Diaries. That was a live, active case of incredible paranormal activity at this house, and actually in the whole section of Litchfield, Connecticut. And so that's called the Haunted House Diaries, and that's about diary that the lady of the house kept over the many years of living there. And then the third book is Phantom Messages, which is about chilling phone calls, letters, emails, and texts from unknown realms. So that's kind of like a phone calls from the dead and beyond, revisiting all the kind of phantom messages that we see, even outside of hauntings. We're looking for unexpected, unasked for communication.
Mm-hmm. And
so those are the three books, and then there's the companion guide.
And the book that you wrote, oh my God, I can't remember it now. I had you guys on the show. Your partner in book
Phantom
crime.
That must have been Phantom Messages with Jimmy.
Yeah.
Jimmy Petnito. Yes. Yeah. That's about the phone calls, letters, texts, and emails.
Yeah.
And quite fascinating phenomena.
That was good. So you've got a lot of reading material for people, which is really good. And are you thinking about anything, another book, perhaps sometime in the near future?
I am. Yeah, I am. I'm poking away at it, so we'll see.
How about a hint? What?
I'm thinking more in the cryptid line. So, yeah. Always fascinating.
Yes, yeah. There's a whole lot of things to choose from in there, for sure.
Yeah.
But I hope people are getting to get out and get this new book, because it's really interesting and a lot of good stuff in there. And I'm just going to say that thank you to be here to share, and thank you to the people that are listening in. They always do a good job, and the questions do a good job when they ask, which is good. And so until next time, everybody, blessed be and merry meet again. Good night.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks. Please join us again next week at the same time for another great guest and more cauldron stirring. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2024. The Mysterioso March by Kevin MacLeod is licensed through Incompetech.com.
All right, we're clear.
Okay, I was holding my breath. It's like a... No, that worked out pretty well. What do you think?
Yes, I thought
both
it
of you.
worked out well.
Yeah,
it worked out well. The sound was great. The content was good. It went along smoothly. It was just under 1 hour, so we are good to go. Hang on a second. I got to shut off the recorder.
okay.
Because where'd it go?
Yeah, you might say something that'll be not good. just.